This video is sponsored by Vox Link, a new service that's currently on Kickstarter that's aimed to help you find games of Warhammer 40k in your local area. Go check it out now at the links down below the video, and we'll have more about them later on. What's up, folks? Welcome back to TacticalTortoise. My name is Trevi, and this is 40k Tournament Tech Talk. This is the 40k video series where we take lists from recent tournaments over the past weekend and break them down, talk about what they played against and what makes them tick. And today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. A lot of times what I do is take a single list and then dive into the matchups that it played against, but instead what I'm going to do today is talk about a faction, because we had one faction that did pretty well over the course of the last weekend, and that is Space Wolves. We've got a lot of different interesting Space Wolf lists that kind of run the gamut between more meta-oriented Space Wolf lists to really classic crunchy lists. And I want to talk about all of them. So I have 3 lists for you today that either went undefeated, 2 of them did, or went X and 1 and came in the very top echelon of their respective tournaments. One of them had a single loss on its record, and we're going to break them down. So let me know down in the comment section if you like this style of video, or we talk a little bit less about single lists and a little bit more about a whole faction. And remember to like and subscribe to all the YouTube things, and let's dive right in. Getting into Warhammer 40k seriously can be really tough. There are so many rules and interactions to learn, armies to discover, and models to paint. So many models to paint. So finding events to participate in and practice games to use to prepare for those events shouldn't be one of those difficulties, which is why I'm excited to talk to you today about Vox Link. Vox Link is a new social media app created by tabletop gamers for tabletop gamers. The app is designed to bring players together and includes tools to help you find players and play groups close to you. You can post that you're looking for games and even include specific criteria like points levels and whether you're looking to play casual play or engage in some competitive practice. The app is live on Kickstarter as we speak and needs your help to become a reality. In addition to some sick swag, backers also get huge savings on premium memberships, who receive early access to new features, discounts on event tickets and partnered stores, and the ability to host bracketed events in the app. Vox Link is going to be insanely useful and has the potential to be transformative to the Warhammer 40k community and how we find games with each other, which is especially important as we expand and accrue new players. So check it out on Kickstarter today at the links down below the video to help find new players and improve your game. So the first list we're going to talk about today is a little bit of a state of the art of the Space Wolf faction. This is Scott Rumpel's list from the Rocky Mountain Open, a super major level event run by Frontline Gaming. This list was built out of a Space Wolf successor and focused very heavily on the Space Wolf ability to take custom loadouts of war gear on a lot of their units. And actually you'll find that that's one of the big benefits of the Space Wolf subfaction in general. They have a lot of custom units like Longfangs and Wolfguard Squad that get different loadouts from their equivalent in a normal Codex list. So unlike something like an Assault Squad, where you have a very rigid set of war gear you can take, Skyclaws, for example, are much more flexible, and you can really take advantage of that with the new implementation of free war gear in the Space Marine Codex. So this list is trying as hard as it can to get as many Melta or multi-damage equivalent weapons into its unit as transhumanly possible. The list is led by a chapter master on bike with the Hunter Warlord trait allowing him to advance in charge, as well as Rites of War to give him an aura of objective secured. He also has the Armor of Rust to force a fight last, and he brings the first one of our combi Meltas. The first of many, as it were. This is, I should mention, using a custom subfaction using Born Heroes for +1 to hit on the charge, and Whirlwind of Rage for exploding 6s in melee. This combos well with the Space Wolf Super Doctrine, because you retain that Space Wolf +1 to hit with your melee attacks, but then you duplicate the exploding 6s that they get when they're in Assault Doctrine. So they essentially get Tesla 6s. They get 2 additional hits on a hit roll of 6. And because we have this Chapter Master, he can allow you to full reroll on a unit, and you can basically add about 30 to 50% to the expected damage output of that unit, which is ludicrous. We then have 2 units of infiltrators in the troop slot, alongside a hefty elite slot. A Justiciar for an extra source of fight last. It's a little bit of a sub-theme in the Space Wolf sub-faction, where they have a lot of access to fight last between the Justiciar, the Chapter Master, and potentially Librarians. He's in a character elite slot, so he doesn't take one of the other slots reserved for multi-model units, and that allows us to take 3 units of 5 Wolfen with a mix of Thunderhammer, Storm Shields, and Frost Claws, and 3 units of 5 Wolf Guard. Now these guys are going to be pretty common, so expect to see them a couple more times this video. These guys are equipped with jump packs, combi meltas, lightning claws, and a Thunderhammer on the Sergeant. This gives you 5 Melta shots apiece. We are already deep into the Melta weeds with this list, and really strong melee output. Those lightning claws mean that those exploding attacks from the Whirlwind of Rage and the extra hits from your Super Doctrine convert more highly thanks to those full rerolls, and exploding attacks with a Thunderhammer that already is offsetting its -1 to hit for being an unwieldy weapon, with that +1 to hit from Born Heroes, lets this unit do massive damage in melee for a very reasonable points cost. Moving on, we have a full fast attack boat with a Cyber Wolf to do utility things, one of the best single model units in the game, probably, alongside 2 units of 6 Skyclaws. Now the interesting thing about Skyclaws is that they can both take Melta Guns on 2 special weapon troopers in the unit, but they can also take a special weapon on their Sergeant as well. No one really knows why, but it's a Space Wolf thing, I guess. So that lets you take 3 Melta Guns in a normal brick of 5 Skyclaws. However, Space Wolves being Space Wolves can also take Wolf Guard in other units. So you can play a Jump Pack Wolf Guard with a Thunderhammer and Combi Melta inside that Skyclaw unit, allowing you to take 4 additional Melta Guns in each of these packs of 6 Skyclaws. So we already have 15 Melta Guns in our elite slot, 1 in the HQ, so we're up to 16, and 8 more in our fast attack, up to a massive 24. In addition, we have 3 Long Fang squads, and these guys probably embody the Space Wolf ability to take wild combinations of war gear. Unlike Devastators, Space Wolves can take 5 heavy weapons instead of 4. Again, nobody knows why, just a Space Wolf thing. So there's Sergeant, who's bringing another Melta Gun and a Power Fist. Alongside the heavy weapons, 2 units are running 5 heavy weapons, 1 with missile launchers, 1 with las cannons, and the 3rd unit running 4 grav cannons. Then, in addition, we can still take a Wolf Guard in that unit, and in this case, the Wolf Guard can be a Terminator. And that Terminator can take a Cyclone missile launcher. So we are up to basically 7 missile launchers in the missile launcher unit. There's some interesting synergy between that Wolfguard Terminator and the Long Fang squad, because a lot of the bonuses that Long Fangs confer are targeted to a single model. That model doesn't necessarily have to be a Long Fang itself. It just has to be a member of the unit, which means that the unit leader, the pack leader, can point its Signum array at the Terminator in the unit. So his 2 Cyclone missile launcher shots are going to be resolved at ballistic skill 2. Then you can also use the Armorium Cherub on that Cyclone missile launcher as well, which allows it to shoot after the rest of the unit has shot a second time. So you can, for example, five missile launcher shots, a 2+ ballistic skill Cyclone missile launcher, burn the Armorium Cherub, and shoot the 2-shot Cyclone missile launcher again for a total of 9 heavy weapon shots out of this unit. Absolutely ludicrous damage output from these guys. And they're also packing a Melta Gun, Power Fist, and Thunderhammer for when the enemies get close as well. Space Wolves have always had a little bit of synergy with heavy weapon teams because they have keen senses, and the Cunning of the Wolf stratagem, which lets them outflank. Now you can just use strategic reserves for that for free, so that's less useful, but that keen senses allows you to ignore the penalty to move and shoot those heavy weapons. So while they're not counting as stationary, allowing them to come off the side of the table and fire without penalty, they still ignore that hit penalty because it's just a -1 to hit effect. This list in particular played against some pretty tough comers in its road to 6-0. Playing against Tau Empire, Tyranids, that's unfortunate, sorry Tyranids, a Shadowkeeper's Custodes army before World Eaters and the Meta Breaker Dark Angels. And then in the finals, Dark Angels again! This list apparently great against Dark Angels. Turns out, a ton of D6 damage weapons will eventually get through their 4+ invulnerable saves. I believe that Rocky Mountain Open was streamed over on Wargames Live, so go check them out. I'll drop a link down in the video description to their coverage of that event, and I think that Scott was on stream, but I have not verified that. But if he is, then I'll post it. So there you go. Like I said before, I'm pretty sure this is the cutting edge of the Space Wolf meta, but there are some interesting evolutions of this style of list that you can play. And one of them is the list we're going to talk about next. This is a very similar style of list, played by Linton Rowan over at Rosehammer. It is focusing on a lot of the same units that we just talked about, including Wolfguard with Combi Meltas, Wolfen, and Skyclaws, but it has one important iteration. The list is running a similar successor chapter to the one we just talked about. Instead of Born Heroes, it is running Hungry for Battle, so it's missing out on that +1 to hit on the charge. However, it is getting +1 to charge, making its charges much easier to confirm. Now, this is gonna combo with another unit that we have in the list separately. The Whirlwind of Rage is still here as well to give you exploding sixes and additional effects when you're in the Assault Doctrine. Now, you can put units into the Assault Doctrine with its Chief Librarian. This guy's running Psychic Mastery to get a +1 to hit, and he has Instincts Awoken, which allows him to turn a unit into being in Assault Doctrine to get all those benefits of +1 AP and exploding sixes on the melee weapons. He's also got Murderous Hurricane, so he has a Fight Last ability as well, instead of having Armor of Rust like the previous list had. Now, this guy's running Armor Indomitus and Psychic Mastery, so he does have that +1 to cast, and the Armor Indomitus makes him much harder to kill, alongside being able to keep up with the rest of the list with a Jump Pack. Now, in the Elite slot, we have a similar boat of units that we just saw from Scott Rumpel's list, but a lot more Wolfen in this one. We have 3 units of 5 Wolf Guard with their Combi Meltas and Lightning Claws. No Thunderhammers on these guys. We are keeping them as cheap as possible, but those Lightning Claws do pack a hell of a punch. Alongside that are 3 almost max-size units of Wolfen, 2 units of 10, and 1 of 9. Thunderhammers and Storm Shields across the boat here, and the big benefit that these guys get is a built-in synergy with that Whirlwind of Rage, since they're always considered to be in Assault Doctrine, so we don't have to point Instincts Awoken at them. Getting the +1 to charge is super useful for them though, because while they are infantry and they're kind of a fast movement value, if their opponent is hiding from them and trying not to get into melee, they do have a little bit of a tough time actually bridging the gap between your army and your opponents. That is helped, however, by our later selections. We do have 3 units of 6 Skyclaws in this list. These are the exact same build that we just saw in Scott Rumpel's list. 3 Melta Guns in the unit itself, a Wolf Guard attached with a Combi Melta and a Thunderhammer. So just a bunch of Melta shots from those guys. So this list in particular is running 12 shots from the Skyclaws and 15 from the Wolf Guard, so only 27. Last but certainly not least, however, we do have a Lord of War in this attachment, and that is Robute Gilliman, the Great Blue Wolf himself. He is an Ultramarine, which feels a little bit weird, but thanks to the recent Arcs of Omen Supreme Commander update, a lot of the Supreme Commanders in the game can be brought in your Arcs of Omen detachment without breaking any detachment abilities, and that is what we're making use of Robute Gilliman here for. He can be brought in, and while he is an Ultramarine, he doesn't stop you from getting your Super Doctrine or your Doctrine effects. He's just along for the ride. However, Gilliman is unique in that he has a lot of overarching effects that affect any Imperium unit regardless of the subfaction they belong to. So while a lot of his bonuses only affect Ultramarines and will basically only work on himself, he does give you reroll 1s to hit in a 12-inch aura, making this entire list a lot more consistent, and especially so since he affects Wolfen with that ability, since it doesn't require you to have the core keyword. And he gives you +1 to charge. This +1 to charge, unlike the Chaplain's charge bonus, is stackable with other charge buffs, so the fact that this list is running Hungry for Battle alongside Gilliman's +1 to charge aura gives the entire list +2 to charge. Charging probabilities are worked out on a bell curve, so if you're able to push any bonuses to charge, the bigger those bonuses get, you oftentimes get exponentially more effective at making your charges, at least if you're moving from the higher numbers to the mid or low numbers. Getting +2 to charge on a 4-inch charge doesn't help too much, but getting +2 to charge on a 7-inch charge makes you dramatically more likely to make that charge, and that super duper helps units like these Wolfen. Now, a little interestingly, Gilliman does have to be your army's warlord, and he unlocks a bunch of command points for you to do that. I think we do have a little bit of a mistake in the list, though. He has been upgraded with his warlord trait in this case, Nobility Made Manifest, which, in fact, does not do anything. Now, while you do have to make Gilliman the warlord, you don't have to purchase his warlord trait, so you can save yourself a CP by not doing that. It gives you the ability to heroically intervene with Ultramarine infantry and bikers, of which there are none in this list, Gilliman himself being a monster, and already able to heroically intervene. Why would you even need to do that? Yeah, so don't leave that one at home. Might have just been a misclick here. This list played against an interesting swath of enemies, beating Chaos Knights, Grey Knights, Tzeentch Demons, a Drukhari list before facing World Eaters and Imperial Knights in the final 2 rounds, and going 6-0. Like I said before, this is an evolution of the classic Melta list that we just talked about in Scott Rumpel's version. This one is focusing a little bit more on melee units rather than just trying to pack as many ranged attacks into the list as possible, and gets a little bit spicy with the inclusion of that Roboot Gilliman. The question is whether that makes it more consistent to just playing more guns, but I think it's pretty sweet. And speaking of sweet lists, let's talk about our final list for the day. This one was from the 40k Match Play event, which was played in Nottingham, England, in Warhammer World itself. This is one of GW's own events. And this list was run by Tristan Whitehead, who played classic, I imagine a baby blue-gray variety of Space Wolves. This was pure Space Wolves, no successor chapters involved this time around. We are the OG Space Wolves and included basically as many Space Wolf specific units as we possibly could. The HQ selection of this list is wild, including Bjorn the Fell-Handed, Njal the Stormcaller, and Ragnar Blackmane, alongside a Primaris Lieutenant. Now, this Primaris Lieutenant might not look that exciting, but you'd be wrong about that, because he is the Space Wolf specific Primaris Lieutenant, about which I made a whole video way back in the day. This guy's got a 2 damage gun and melee attack, and actually is the most well-rounded profile of Primaris Lieutenant out of all of the many dozens that are available to you if you're a Space Marine player. He's absolutely sick. And in this case, he's running the Saga of the Hunter, Armor of Rus, and Wolfkin Warlord trait. Now, I think there was a little bit of a mistake on this list. It calls Bjorn the Fell-Handed as the Army's Warlord, but it is, in fact, the Primaris Lieutenant, because he has the double Warlord trait ability. Njal the Stormcaller is here as well with his Warlord trait, and Ragnar Blackmane's running his as well, so we're just Warlord traded up in here. Alongside that, we have 2 units of 5 Incursors and 5 Infiltrators to add some objective holding, alongside an Intercessor squad for a little bit of extra ranged damage. But speaking of ranged damage, we also have a unit of 5 Aggressors. These guys are running Flamestorm Gauntlets, and they are riding to battle in style in a Repulsor. That's alongside 2 Wolfen Dreadnoughts. These things are absolutely sick with a huge D3+3 damage Fenrisian Great Axe, alongside a 4+ invulnerable save from their Blizzard Shields, and rocking Heavy Flamers, a unit of 7 Wolfen, and 2 units of 5 Hounds of Morkai. It's been a long time since I've seen Hounds of Morkai on the table. They are very specifically anti-Psyker units. However, they do have a Phobos Marine body. They're basically just Reavers, which makes them extremely efficient Primaris infantry, and they have some additional abilities, like additional damage against Psyker units, which is great against things like Chaos Demons, alongside the ability to ignore mortal wounds from Psychic powers on a 4+. Anytime Psychic powers or Psychic armies are good in the metagame, Hounds of Morkai immediately become great, because they're extremely efficient points per wound, and because they ignore so many mortal wounds, they're actually one of the most efficient units at receiving smites in the entirety of the game. Despite being Phobos infantry, they don't forward deploy, but the Repulsor can actually help them out a little bit. You can even embark the Hounds of Morkai in the Repulsor to begin the game, and then immediately disembark them to get a little bit of extra movement to screen the rest of your army from mortal wound output, then embark the Aggressors and move the Repulsor up the table as the God Emperor intended. We also have a unit of 5 Thunderwolf Cavalry in here, just to add some additional Space Wolf spice, with a mix of melee weapons, Thunderhammers, Power Fists, Lightning Claws, and a Frostclaw pair on the Sergeant. This list went X and 1, unfortunately losing in round 2 to Iron Hands. I think that's fair. Iron Hands is rough, but in fact won against Iron Hands in round 5. So in totality, it played against Imperial Fists in round 1, a little bit of a softball, losing to that Iron Hands player, but then winning against Farsight Enclaves and Chaos Demons, 2 of the better armies in the metagame. And then obviously, we learned some lessons from our round 2 game, because it beat Iron Hands in round 5 for a second time. This list is classy as hell. That's all I have to say about it. It's just a bunch of cool Space Wolves having a great time together, and I think that's fun. So with that, that's all the Space Wolf lists that I want to talk about from this past weekend. Again, let me know down in the comments if you like this focus on a faction rather than a specific list, and I'll keep doing it if this video does good. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Big thanks for everyone who supports the channel, including Vox Link. Please go check them out in the links down below the video. Everyone who supports the channel as well, either over on Patreon at patreon.com/TacticalTortoise, YouTube channel members, and Twitch subscribers. All you people are sweet. You're great. I love you. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and keep howling at the moon.